The sound of pages turning means it's time for another episode from the Meredith Library podcast studio, bringing you the library's latest news, information, and fun.
Good afternoon, Anna.
Good afternoon, Matthew.
Are you ready for episode number 15 of Check It Out?
No.
You are not ready?
No, I'm not ready today. No, I'm kidding. I'm ready.
All right. I bet you are going to tell us all about a new book project. But the interesting thing is, they're old books.
I will be talking about that. But first, you have possibly some new old books as well that you want to be talking about.
That's true. So should we call this the new old book edition?
I think we should, yes.
Oh, the old new book edition.
Are they new old books or old new books? Let us know.
Thanks to ponder. I just came across something from one of our large print publishers where they're having a special promotion with Western collection books. So Westerns as the genre.
I've always wanted to, if I traveled back in time, I would head straight to the saloon. I just think it's such a funny word.
Okay, that's fair. You want to push yourself through those swinging doors.
I do, and I want to order a sarsaparilla.
Okay, and are you going to have the player piano going in the background by itself?
Yeah, or I'll say, hit it, and then someone will just start playing some tunes, some old Western tunes.
Yes, I can totally see that.
But back to what you're talking about. So what is this promotion from this publishing company with the Westerns?
Yeah, so they're offering a certain percentage off, a higher percentage than usual from the list price, if we purchase a whole bunch of Westerns within a certain time period. And interestingly, just a couple months ago, I did start purchasing a handful of Westerns for our large print collection. It was something I noticed that we did not have in the collection, and I thought that would be interesting for people to try that out. And I know that, like all genres, like 15 years ago, the vampire genre had gone crazy with Twilight. So they all go through their cycles, right? And then with shows like Yellowstone and its prequel that are on right now, there's interest again in Westerns. So I ordered some a couple months ago, and I've seen them come in and out, start to circulate. And then suddenly I came across this thing with this opportunity to really enhance our collection in this genre.
So you think you might be ahead of a trend, clocking that maybe Westerns are on their way to being back in kind of popular centered, reader.
And there's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing going on here too, because if the publishing companies are pushing that, is it because they are picking up on a trend, or are they trying to set a trend, as always?
Well, that sounds great. And who's like a popular Western author? I know Robert Parker is one, right?
A famous name, okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple here that they're particularly mentioning, which are available as part of this promotion, and you may recognize these names. One of them is Max Brand. That was a very famous one. In fact, that one even gets a registered trademark after the name.
Wow.
So there you go. Let's see. And William W. Johnstone is another one. And so part of this collection are these classic names that people will recognize. And others are also brand new ones. So the way they phrased it was includes classics from writers such as the names I said, as well as today's winners of the coveted Spur Award. That's Spur, S-P-U-R.
Yeah, like on the Spurs on a cowboy boot,
yes,
right?
Exactly. There's a table up in the large print area that has new titles, and several of them will be there when they come in.
Yeah, come live your cowboy fantasy. And we were talking about how when there are titles on our new displays, either upstairs by the large print or down in the rotunda in the main area.
On the first floor, yep.
On the first floor. They're new to us and might be relatively new to the world. They might have been published semi-recently, but not necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and we should also mention that there is another way to find out new books that we have here at the Meredith Library.
Yes, so we have the physical locations of the rotunda and the displays upstairs, like we mentioned.
Yes.
But also,
in every issue of the newsletter, there is a section called New Adult Items. I have one right here in front of me. I see fiction, nonfiction, biographies, and large print fiction, all listed as new things. And I'm holding it up like they could almost see that, right? You can see it, right?
I can see it. It looks great. And also on the website, there's that little carousel
Yes.
that has all the new, and it's not only adult, but also children and teen.
Yes. So the way to find either of those is through the website. One is the carousel. And if people don't know, a carousel is just a thing on a website that is just a rotation of information. In this case, it's the text titles and the picture of the covers. And then also to sign up for the Meredith Library newsletter, which will also tell you all kinds of fun things. It can be interviews. There can be paragraphs of information. There can be all the stuff about events coming up. You just go to the Meredith Library website at meredithlibrary.org. Down at the bottom of the page, it says sign up for our newsletter. You do that, one of the pages that will be included will be this list of all the new items.
We update it, so stay informed, and you'll know when, oh, I've been waiting for that book. Oh, the Meredith Public Library has it. I should go down. I should check it out. Speaking of titles that are new to us, but not new to the world, I have been making some new purchases to our classics collection.
Okay, tell us about that.
For those of you that don't know, we have a classics collection in the library. And if you head up our stairs, you take the door to the left and then hook an immediate right. It's in the corner, and there are people that like the classics, and it's nice to have them all in one little spot instead of weeded in with the rest of our adult fiction collection.
Yes, likely the place you would need to be if you were doing some high school English assignment, for example.
Exactly, yes. Or you're interested in reading the literary canon. It's all just in one place. So I did something called a diversity audit, which is when you look at a specific collection and you check the titles to see how many of them are racially diverse, gender diverse, sexuality diverse, and the American literary canon, which is, again, the books that you are kind of told to read in English class that are heralded as peak literature. It's notoriously male and notoriously white. And so I was curious about our collection, and the amount of white authors that we had, out of 296 books, 95% of them were by white authors, and 69% of them were by male authors. So I was like, that seems like it needs to be addressed, right?
Okay. All right. So what did you do?
I did some research, like I like to do, and found some new books that are either by people of color, by women, or by people who are not straight. Because I thought we should just add that, to our collection. And found 10 great new titles. Again, this doesn't put a major dent, but, every little one helps. But I think a common misconception is that the literary canon just is male and white, and that there just aren't books out there written by other types of people. But that's not true. There's actually a ton, and they're really good. So I'm just going to give you some titles of some of the new books that I purchased.
Okay. Are these available yet, or are they coming soon to the shelves?
They are all here.
Okay.
And I read a couple. So the first one is a book called Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, which is this American-Nigerian author. And I had read that, and it's very good. There's Bless Me Ultima by Rudolfo Anaya. Passing by Nella Larson. I'd also read that in college, and it's very short. You can read it in like a day. It's so good. Romance in Marcel by Claude McKay. That was published 90 years posthumously.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm really interested in reading this book. It's called No No Boy by John Okada, and it's by a Japanese-American man, and it's about the Japanese internment camp experience during World War II, which is a facet of World War II history I feel like we don't have a ton of stuff about necessarily right now.
Absolutely.
I just read The Street by Ann Petrie, and it was one of the best books I've ever read. It was so good.
That's an endorsement right there for you.
It was the first book in America by an African-American woman to sell 1 million copies.
Wow. And what year was that? Do you know?
It was in the 40s.
Okay.
I have these two books. One's called Ceremony by Leslie Marmon Silko, and another called Housemaid of Dawn by Scott N. Momaday, and they are both by Indigenous Americans. And in the 60s, there was a Indigenous American literary renaissance where a lot of works came out. And actually, both of those books are about Indigenous men serving in World War II and then kind of coming home and dealing with the PTSD and prejudice and stuff like that. Yeah, but a lot of Native Americans, a lot of Black Americans like serve in World War II or serve in a war and then come back and still aren't treated as citizens of the place that they just fought for.
Right, and they might have found it different at certain times in history. In the military, it was more egalitarian, and then when they returned back to civilian society, like you're saying, it was going back to what they had been used to before, which was not adequate. Yep.
Right, exactly, yeah. And sort of reconnecting with their culture as a way to kind of cope with the horrors of fighting in a war. And then also the picture of Dorian Gray. Do you know Oscar Wilde was the first celebrity trial to ever happen in Victorian England, and he was put on trial for being gay.
1890s or so?
Yeah, sometime around there, because it was illegal in England to be gay. The picture of Dorian Gray is a very, very sarcastic book, kind of criticizes like living in excess. You know, Dorian Gray sells his soul to be beautiful forever and ends up living a life of debauchery and evil, and it only gets worse as time goes on.
All right, we'll look forward to all of those then being available to, well, you said they are available now for our patrons.
Yeah, and you can, impress your friends. You'd be like, oh, yeah, what, you reading Hemingway again? Well, did you know about this and this author? It's a little more underground, a little more, just say a little more underground.
All right, I'll go with that.
The final thing we have to talk about is the question of the day. So this episode, I was thinking about how, we're heading back to school soon because we're in the end of August. Got me thinking about high school, thinking about all the classic literature. So what was a book you had to read, an assigned reading book when you were a kid, probably in high school, that you just was such torture to get through?
Yes, I can think of one.
What's yours?
Ethan Frome.
Ooh, yeah, I had to read Ethan Frome. It's so short, but it doesn't feel like it.
Right, exactly.
And it's so miserable. It takes place in the winter, right? And it's just like a miserable, miserable book.
Yeah, I barely remember it. I only remember trying to talk my 10th grade English teacher out of having us read that. It didn't work.
Mine, well, I have two. There was this book I had to read before I started AP European History when I was a junior in high school. And so it was like a summer reading assignment. And it was this book called A World Lit Only by Fire. And it was about the Middle Ages. And it was so dry. And I fell asleep after reading 3 pages that I had to bribe myself with a gummy bear every time I read a page to get through it.
That's funny.
So that was really hard. And then for some reason, I don't know if it was just the time or whatever, but I had a hard time getting through Jane Eyre.
Wasn't doing it for you.
Was not. And I felt like it should have, but it didn't. But were there any books that you absolutely surprised you absolutely loved when you were a kid?
Yes. Well, also in high school, from a different high school English class, would be The Scarlet Letter. And I thought that was so modern, which was so funny because it's set in the 1600s. And it is so not modern in the way of, you're basically thinking of, the level of Plymouth Plantation, right? If people were just barely off the Mayflower. The interesting thing to me was how modern it was in the ideas that it never changes of people are doing things behind closed doors. They're supposed to be, or they're projecting one type of personality to the public. They're really doing something else. And then what are the consequences of dealing with those things that you've done when it all comes out?
So that really, all those themes, when you read that as a kid, it really connected to you and you were like, oh, I can see how we're still dealing with this stuff today. Sort of like a timeless type of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so that was yours.
Okay.
Mine, this is a newer book, but I read it in my world history class in high school. The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. It is just about an Afghani boy growing up, and I could not put it down. It was so beautifully written. It's about boyhood, about your relationship with your father, with your friends, and also Afghanistan changes throughout his childhood into his adulthood, and I think he ends up in America in the end. And it's just so poignant, so beautiful. It was never before. It was the first book that I finished before
the assignment.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It was so good. And then also my favorite book ever, Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. It's a beautiful book. We do have it in the classics section.
Right, and I think we're going to wrap it up here then.
Yeah, it sounds like a good place to end. So let us know about what your love book that you were assigned in school was, or your book that was just so much of a chore to even read or get through. I'm sure we have some Moby Dicks out there because that book was a brick.
Yes, I never read that one. I was not assigned that one.
Me neither. I think
we missed that one somehow.
I'm thankful. But yeah, I had a good time chatting with you today.
I always have a good time chatting with you, Anna.
Thank you.
All right, we will be back next episode, and we will look forward to feedback from our audience in the comment sections.
Have a good day.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Sounds like we're at the end of another chapter.
Podcast music titled Daytime TV Theme by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0. Podcast copyright 2024. Meredith Library Podcast Studio.